Hello and welcome back to another tasting video. I'm Fred Minnick, and I've had the pleasure of tasting every Buffalo Trace Antique collection since I started covering whiskey in 2006. Also went back in time a few times and tasted some of the great ones. And you're going to find those on my list of bourbons of the century so far, which if you want to check that out, click the subscribe button. I have those videos coming up every single day throughout Bourbon Heritage Month here in September 2020. Now, these are the 2020 Buffalo Trace Antique Collection releases. Now, if you want to learn more about what these are, go in the description and you'll find my blog post about this year's releases. This is the most anticipated limited edition lineup of all distilleries. So this is the one that everybody hunts, everybody wants, and often can't get. And when they do see it, it's usually inflated way, way above what the suggested retail price is. So these are media samples. I did not purchase these at retail. These were sent to me by Buffalo Trace. And I just got the package, opened it up, and said, you know what? Let's taste them. Now, what I will do after I taste these, I'm going to throw them in some blind tastings. So I'm going to put the ryes up against like rare breed rye and a couple other ryes. And I'm going to put the bourbons up against some ordinary bourbons like, let's say, Old Forester 1920. Just to see if those everyday bourbons can stand up and be as good or better as the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. Now, last year I did that, and Rare Breed beat all of them. So, Rare Breed last year took that prize. So, here we go. I'm actually, normally I tell people to start with the bourbon, but there is a rye in here, the 18-year-old Sazerac at 90 proof. I can't wait to get in this one. I love older ryes, and so I'm gonna go in that. So we're gonna start with the Sazerac Kentucky Straight Rye Whiskey, 18 years. So this has been in a barrel basically, for all of 2020. Oh yeah, that nose is showing a lot of promise. Just beautiful like earth. Think about walking into a warehouse, one of those really nice old warehouses. You've got some cobwebs over here, you got some mold over there. This isn't the showpiece warehouse where they're taking tourists. This is the one where they take people to hunt barrels, and it has all those beautiful smells of a classic Kentucky warehouse. That earth, that sweetness, that oak. And in there, just like a cherry candy. You get those little cherry candies like an Altoid. Altoids aren't cherry. But you get the little tin of like cherry candies. You open it up and you can smell that. Wow, that is complex. Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, this is going to be a hard one for anything to beat. This Sazerac Rye, 18 years old, is just on the tongue like velvet. I mean, it's just spreading throughout and just coating the entire palate with spice and fruit and sweetness. Like, there's the amount of caramel in this for a rye is just amazing. So this has so much caramel goodness in there, along with the spice that you hope for. Well, the Sazerac Rye starts off this collection for me really, really nice. Tasting this, knowing what I'm tasting, is definitely a lot of fun here. But I will be putting this in a blind tasting up against some other ryes to see how they fare. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the Eagle Rare 17-year-old. To me, this is the yearly disappointment. I have not had many of the Eagle Rare 17-year-olds that wowed me. The one last year was probably the best that has been out. Now this one comes in at 101 proof. 101 proof. Smells, the smells like coming off of that Sazerac Rye, it's like I get into this and I'm like, ugh, you're letting me down, Eagle Rare. You're letting me down. But it's also probably not fair to, no, the heck with that. If you're in the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, you best be bringing it. And the nose just is not bringing it. It does not have that that level of complexity that I'd like to smell in this. But when you're not smelling your bourbon all the time, you got to drink it at some point. It's rather, it's got like a graham crackery, just think of like putting a little bit of Nutella on a graham cracker. That seems to be like a real prominent note here for me is some graham cracker, maybe some honey, but it just does not have the complexity that I'm wanting. And again, I'm tasting it after tasting something that blew my socks off. But, this one's the Eagle Rare 17-year-old. It just feels like it's not ready. There's a couple notes there, but it's like it's not awake, and it's not really hitting many parts of my tongue. It's kind of focusing on the middle of my tongue, just a little bit at the tip of my tongue, but there's not any movement beyond that. And, the flavors are not wowing me. That said, if you can find a bottle, I would still buy it at a, decent price. I wouldn't spend stupid money on that. Sazerac 18-year-old, it's getting better and better as I keep thinking and talking about it. But, I'm just saying that thing is good. All right, so now the question is, where do I go after those two? Do I go to the Stagg? 130 proof. Do I go to the Handy, 129 proof? Or do I go to the Weller, 134 proof? Well, everywhere I turn is high proof city. So I'm going to go with, I think I'm going to stay in the bourbon category, go to the Weller. This right here, the William Larue Weller, year in, year out, is a contender for Whiskey of the Year. No matter who's putting out that award, whether it's me, another critic, a magazine, a competition, this whiskey, year in, year out, is almost always a contender. Oh boy, and this year's no different. Oh, yeah. Man, does that smell like peach cobbler coming out of the oven? And just like you put that spoon in there and you can smell the caramelization of the peaches inside in there with all that kind of like doughy bread goodness and the caramelization of the sugars all coming together. This nose on this year's Weller is a friggin' peach cobbler dream. Wow. Wow. complex, just getting right up on the tongue, you know, covering every inch. It's coming down to the sides, tickling the sides of the tongue. The sweetness on this, from the caramel to the vanilla to like a white icing. There's some chocolate in here. There's pecan pie. But I go back to that peach cobbler note, that fried, you know, that it's not fried, but it's like crispy baked, and you pull it out of the oven, and there's all that doughy goodness, and the peaches get all sweetened up with however they were, you know, sugar and that contents of the cobbler. It just is amazing how much this tastes like peach cobbler. And now I need a healthy helping of peach cobbler, and I want to drink it with this. My God. Now, this is an easy one to declare right now that it's fan-friggin-tastic. So this year's Weller is not a disappointment. Wow. I'm still going back in my head to the Sazerac and how beautiful that was, especially at 90 proof. Now, the Weller, it's coming in with a lot more heat. But for the Sazerac to be able to stand up to that still in my head, you know, I think is a continued compliment to Sazerac on that one. So let's now go to the other bourbon in the bunch, George T. Stagg. Now, there are a couple George T. Staggs on my best bourbons of the century so far. Oh shit, I poured way too much. I gotta keep some of this for my blind tastings coming up. Damn, don't get overzealous. Jeez. I mean, look at that. I poured. It's like, do I like want to drink the Stagg over? I mean, do I like just want to drink it? I mean, because subconsciously, I mean, what's going on here? I just poured about half that damn bottle. Oh boy. Nutmeg. Pumpkin pie. Toasted oak. So you're going into like a cooperage, and they're over there. They're toasting the wood in the barrel before they go to the char. That's what it smells like. Well, hello, George T. Stagg. So, George T. Stagg comes on, you know, very nicely onto the palate. I'm finding that those notes of pumpkin pie and nutmeg. There's some dried apricot there. There's like a cinnamon, you know, kind of like a cinnamon toothpick, you know, there, where it's like a blast of cinnamon, then it's gone. I also find a hint of like Big League Chew bubblegum, you know, so this is, you know, I never like tasting that in a bourbon. So sometimes when I taste a bubblegum note, I'm like, ugh. And, you know, the Stagg, I think it noses really well, and I think it tastes fine, but that finish and that bubblegum note, I think are kind of like turning me off a little bit. I'm going to taste it one more time and see. And again, I'm going to put this in a blind tasting just to see how it fares up against some other stuff. But right now, I definitely prefer the Weller over the Stagg. You know, there's an astringency that came on that second taste, and, you know, it's drying out my palate a little bit. So there's a bit of a dry mouthfeel on this one. So I think Stagg may not be the one for me this year. But again, I'll put it in a blind tasting, and we'll find out. We'll find out how I pick it in a blind tasting. So now let's go to the last one here. Thomas Handy, cask strength. And again, you can find all the information about what warehouses they are, the age, and all that stuff in the description of this channel or this video. Kind of smells like it smells a little bit. It smells a little like licorice, like it opened up a fresh bag of black licorice. That's a very common aromatic property in ryes. I happen to like black licorice. I got to be in the mood for it. Oh, man. Well, that black licorice note is beautiful. There's also a bit of a fried cherry pie. There is some slight hints of apricot, banana, little hints of pineapple. Like, I mean, after like this licorice note, there's a lot of fruit. A lot of fruit comes with it. Then after the fruit is the spice. So typically when you have a rye, the spice will come on first and then the other notes come. For this year's Handy, what I'm getting on my palate is I'm getting the licorice and the fruit first, and then I'm getting the spice. And so that's a really nice kind of approach and very pleasant of how it does that. I happen to like this year's Handy quite a bit. Yeah, so the two ryes in this year's Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, the Sazerac and the Thomas Handy, huge home runs for me. They just really hit my palate right. I think the disappointment here is Eagle Rare. 17-year-old is disappointing to me. But also, I think the Stagg is a disappointment in that Stagg normally has a lot more going on, and I definitely have never gotten an astringency note out of Stagg. Now, there's an astringency, an over oakness to it, whereas the Weller, complex, a lot of stuff going on, and just continues to build upon the flavor and finishing, while the Stagg is not finishing strongly. And I'm definitely picking the Weller over the Stagg and the Eagle Rare. I would put the Stagg over the Eagle Rare, but I also don't think that's saying a whole lot. Now, when it comes between the two ryes, the Sazerac 18-year-old is just downright beautiful. It's complex. I think the Sazerac 18-year-old is something that you could flip a Scotch drinker with. I mean, it's got a lot of those kind of complexity notes that you would find in a Scotch. And I think the Handy is going to be more appealable to your typical American whiskey drinker. But for my palate, in that, this is 90 proof, this is cask strength, I am amazed at how the 90 proof stands up so strongly against this entire, cask strength city. And so to me, I almost think that it's harder to get a 90 proof whiskey like Sazerac, the 18-year-old here. I think it's harder to have that stand up against these behemoths of cask strength. So I'm going to give the nod and the rise to the Sazerac. Now, if I'm having to choose between the Weller and the Sazerac, that's a bit of a Sophie's choice. But damn, the Sazerac's going toe-to-toe with it. Now, completely different styles of whiskey. Definitely hitting different parts of the palate. But I would say that at the end of the day, it comes down to preference and what you like. And I love everything there is about the Weller. And I'm going to go get some peach cobbler now. So I think I'm going to take the Weller as my favorite. Coming in a close second, a very close second, is going to be the Sazerac 18-year-old, followed by the Thomas Handy Rye, and a very distant fourth, George T. Stagg, and in dead last, Eagle Rare. So that'll do it for my first tasting of the 2020 Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. Now, Wednesday, I am going to put the ryes in a rye taste-off and the bourbons in a bourbon taste-off. There's going to be two blind flights, and they're going to be mixed in there with other stuff. So if you want to check that out, click that subscribe button and come join us Wednesday as we talk more whiskey as we do on this channel all the time. Also got the bourbons of the century dropping every single day. And I love what I do, and I appreciate you coming over and spending a little time with me in this little old whiskey community. Until next time, be kind to one another. And don't go licking handrails or trash cans. Cheers. Oh, vodka sucks.